Well, hello. My name is Stella Kanu. I am CEO at Shakespeare's Globe here and delighted to welcome you all. So thank you for joining us. So, you know that we have set a really cheeky provocation. Is theatre stealing dance moves? It's deliberately provocative and it's a provocation that I hope will set the tone for the next 90 minutes. So we are joined by what I hope and what I know are some really experienced, exciting, practice-led movement directors who I'd love to introduce you to our panellists first, and then we can get stuck into the conversation. So Shelley is choreographer, movement director and intimacy professional working across theatre, film and television. She was nominated for the What's on Stage Award for her work on the musical Get Up, Stand Up at the end of 2019, won the inaugural Black British Theatre Choreographer Award for her work on Equus at Trafalgar Studios. Her current work slate includes Shifters, which we all saw, right? At the Duke of York Theatre, Macbeth at the Harold Pinter Theatre, and the television series Joan, which premieres this September. It's worth noting that Shelley was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, started her career as a performing artist, as a dancer and choreographer in the contemporary dance scene in Jamaica, then later in London, and has crossed over from the theatre scene into musical theatre shows and then later as a movement director. And TV and film work includes the Marvel franchise movies, The Marvels, and the recent TV release, Joan, as we've mentioned previously. So, welcome, Shelley.
Thank you.
And no less illustrious, Polly Bennett is a movement choreographer and director. Her unique approach fuses her extensive knowledge of dance and theatre with her insight into human behaviour and physical psychology. This makes her one of the most sought-after creatives scaling the entertainment world. Between theatre to Academy Award-winning films, Polly creates physical worlds for all. We're going to delve a little bit more into that. But welcome to you, Polly.
Thanks.
Hello, and just by magic, Yuki.
Hi.
Hi, Yuki. Yuki is Tokyo-born choreographer and movement director based in London and co-founder of Say. Hopefully we'll get a chance to hear a little bit more about this, alongside Sarah Golding. Their choreography movement direction credits include Romeo and Juliet at, again, Duke of York Theatre. Other theatres are available. The Effect at National Theatre, National Dance Company Wells, Ballet Boys in an R&D, The Place, Northern School of Contemporary Dance, Trinity Laban, and, as we would expect, Dance Studio London. She has worked as a performer at the Art of Spectra, as well as the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony, and has a huge amount of commercial credits, including The Marvels, Nike, Ministry of Sound, and DJ Fresh. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
So I kind of wanted to start with this provocation, the question that we set. And it is deliberately provocative because we wanted to be able to explore what I know is, look, we can take for granted that dance and theatre have always been connected. Movement direction has always been involved in theatre. There is a 20th century back catalogue that kind of tells us so. So we can take it for granted that we know that there has always been this connection. But what we have realised and noticed over the last few years is a series of an increase in the demand for movement directors, not just in classical theatre, which is what we kind of represent, but also across all types of theatre and embodying all types of like cross-pollination across dance forms and across movement styles and practices. So this increase is what we're really talking about, that somehow there is more demand for that. Why do you think that is, Shelley?
Oh, I love that. You just went boom. Well, I think, you know, we have to look at making and theatre making as something that's very human. And it utilizes lots of different people on a team. And one of those people in the team would be a movement director. Mm. For me, I think the rise of it is as a result of what is necessary in a room to create storytelling. So you'll have a team of people that will range from the director to lighting to sound design. And in the past, movement directors or directors of movement, as they were sometimes referred to, were brought in to do a movement sequence or a dance number. And I think as time has progressed, we've realized that having a movement director in a room not only brings value with regards to the movement that's being created, but also brings value in a different way. Because it's talking about how you engage with actors, how you get actors to embody movement. Mind and body connection, they're not separate. So for me, I think the rise is as a result of the humans and the individuals who are artists and who are making work, who have something to offer. So doors are being opened more and more, I think, because we've realized that it takes more sometimes than just having a director or having a sound designer or having a lighting designer to crack a puzzle, to crack what is the storytelling that we want to do with regards to this particular play or this musical or whatever theatrical event it might be. So by opening the doors and allowing movement directors in, we're then going, you can help us form this puzzle. You can help us create solutions that are going to help with embodying movement in a different way, maybe creating a movement language that didn't exist before on the page via text. And with that, I think it's breathing new life into storytelling across the theatre medium. So I think, I love the fact that you said the rise in usage of movement directors versus the rise in movement direction, because I think it's very people-driven.
Okay. Is that the same for you, Polly, do you think? Or do you have a slightly different take?
We completely echo all of those things. But on top of that, hello everyone. Just making sure you're there. There's also a thing of, I'm just, when Shelley was talking, I was thinking, God, there's been some times where I've been in rehearsal rooms or been brought into a space and the physical problem is really clear straight away from a first day of rehearsal, and that must be something that happens now, being 2024. And I'm talking about, God bless us, but mobile phones and internet connection, like we spend more time apart. It's more unusual for us to physicalize our feelings because we're thinking about them or, like expressing them in words. And remembering that, Shakespeare, most of the audience originally watching Shakespeare couldn't read, so they couldn't see the words as they were watching the play. So the physicalization of the text was the thing that made the plays successful. He tells us how to say something potentially, but he doesn't tell us how to move. And so I'm just using those two sort of thoughts to kind of express, I guess, that we are physical beings, but we spend a lot of our time on the Northern Line we're not going, and we're not communicating as viscerally as we used to. And so, actors are mere humans that have to come into a room and meet a new group of friends to then tell a story. So, of course, the movement director is going to get plugged in more and more. I mean, the amount of work that I'm doing outside of theatre, which is with, businessmen or people or public TV presenters, because their bodies are not the things that they use all the time or knowingly. So bringing awareness to that is key.
Just to continue with the provocative theme. So we have a perspective that is breathing fresh breath into the staleness of potentially storytelling. This idea that we are lacking in embodiment in so many different ways, so that is also part of the increase. Yuki, would you say that you agree with those very reductive summaries that I've kind of given, but just again to just kind of keep that provocativeness in the space?
Yeah.
How do you agree, or do you have a slightly different take on it?
No, I think I agree with what Shelley and Polly said, definitely. And also like talking about Shakespearean language, not being English is not my first language, but I still remember at Shakespeare's Globe when the Olympics was happening, there was a Globe to Globe, and I watched Two Gentlemen of Verona in Shona language, and obviously I did not understand the language, but the physicality of it and emotions of it, that I was definitely on the journey and felt I understood emotionally, and I was like, this is what I want to do, pull out more of the physicality that people can actually access without language, like emotions of it, storytelling of it. How can I being use of that to pull movement language that is global. It's not like specific language, it's really global and accessible. Can I be in the support of, specialized in that to help tell the story, but also like just to add from like a contemporary dance choreographer's perspective, I'm like, I do think that theater is stealing dance moves. But because, I mean, it's literally just my opinion, but I think they're really like exciting contemporary dance choreographers coming up to like offer specific movement style or aesthetics and languages that are really exciting and inspiring. I think that the theatre witnessed that, which is great, because I think there are lots of contemporary dance choreographers going into more commercial world and seeing on TV, seeing on music video commercials, and I think there's something like visceral about those movement vocabulary and the contemporary dance choreographers work, that pulling out people's expanding their movement vocabularies and tapping into like a visceral emotions through movement. I think that's why I'd like to think that contemporary dance choreographers are more in demand from theatre.
I love that. Just to drill down on that a little bit more, and just to connect this to, when I was doing a bit of research, Shelley, you've talked a lot about how creativity and collaboration is at the heart of practice, essentially. And one of the publications that I read where you were featured, Maria Aberg talked about how early in her career, it appeared as if theatre, being obsessed with words, saw the actor's body as a mere vessel for what was the most important aspect of theatre, the word. But of course, you're all concerned with the actor's physical body and, as you mentioned, creating this kind of physical language for the words and the movement of the production. How and what is a room that you're kind of in with movement as the language that you're trying to embody? What does that room look like with you in it?
I mean,
just to tap into your own practice.
No, I know. You said so much, and I'm still thinking about what Yuki said as well, but also while you were speaking, I was just watching and observing how your body was articulating itself. And I think...
That's coffee.
But it's also kind of the human, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we're thinking about the body, you said the word vessel, used for text and word. That sounds so empty to me, because the thing is, you know, I'm watching everyone in the room and everyone's reacting in a very physical way, because we talk about the mind and body connection. It's not something that's foreign, it's something that happens to us every day in life. You hear music, you start to bop or rock. You're in the shower, you're moving a little bit if something is on. You don't even need to hear the music externally, you can just have it in your mind. You have a physical reaction to it. And we have a physical reaction with regards to our emotions as well. Everything is rooted within the body, it's all one connection. So I think, for me, if someone walks on stage and is just there to spew text, that's an empty vessel. That it's not someone who's tapping in to what makes us truly human, which comes back to our emotional entity and our emotional being. So part of being an actor, I think, is a responsibility to the truth of what you're doing. And it's not just the text that's on the page, it's what's not on the page. It's understanding what is the unsaid. And so part of being in the room and serving as a movement director is to help to pull what's not there, the invisible. Sometimes, you know, we're referred to as the invisibles, because our work, when it's done well, is something that you can't say is tangible when you watch a production or a show or a TV or film series, if it is in the minor voice of the body. If it's something bigger that requires like an investment like Polly did in Bohemian Rhapsody, then the work is very evident. So coming back to the question that you asked is?
Just your practice, like
my practice.
If you're in the gaps and if you're thinking about the spaces in between, the intangibles, what's your methodology? How do you do that?
I'm going to be so super boring, and I'm going to say that this has been said so many times over, that everyone's practice is unique to themselves and to how you are, because you're bringing with it your history. I'm bringing with it my Caribbean history, the way that I grew up. I'm bringing my knowledge of all the dance forms and the cultural aspects that I had in that upbringing, but I'm also bringing my lived experience, I'm bringing my training, I'm bringing any knowledge that I've garnered.
Can I ask the question slightly differently then? When you're in the room, what is it that activates that? What is it that you need in order to activate that?
So for me, it's people. And I think that was my long drawn up point is every room is different, and I don't have a complete guided practice that I can talk about because I have to treat every room like a mood board. And it's guided by the director and their mood board, and it's guided by the people that I interact with and the actors and what their jump off points might be. And it's about how I can best serve, because for me, I view, and this is my personal feeling, movement direction as something that is about serving others. It's about serving the room and serving the actors and serving the story. So in my rooms, and I can't actually say my rooms, in their rooms, because it belongs to everyone, my jump off point is actually them. It's the bodies in front of me, it's the energies that they're giving, it's what they need, and then how I can fulfill that need in a way that best serves them, best serves the director, and best serves the storytelling. And that's why I said it might be a bit of a boring answer, because I think a lot of movement directors take that approach. So every room is different, and sometimes, like Polly has said in talks outside of this, we walk in and we don't even know what's going to happen in the space. We prep and we do our research, but when we walk into a room, it's just like, ooh, what am I going to find here today? And how do I shift to help make that space the best creative environment that I can possibly manage?
Great. Yeah.
Hope I answered the question somewhat.
It does, it absolutely does. Polly, you know the Globe a little, so you're aware that we have an in-house movement director, and every year there are lots and lots of freelance movement directors that kind of come through the Globe. So there's lots of conversation about movement here. But how would you describe your practice, if you can, or at least what are the ingredients that kind of make a room that you feel that you can do something in?
Cool. So it's really funny, isn't it? Because I think I was thinking about this as I came here. I think arguably, and I can only answer it really by the advice that I give anyone that wants to be involved in this space. Being curious, being hugely curious, being spontaneous. I think definitely my approach is not a considered thing. It's not like I'm going to choose to be like this today. Yeah. But I do think part of my practice is I want to celebrate that I'm able to make connections with people very quickly. And I think that is something that is of value, especially working in a TV and film space where you are given diddly squat amount of time and you have to make something happen very quickly, often behind the scenes, often away from the director's eye, often, like as in not naughty, but like, because they don't have time to be involved. Sure. Just very to clarify, I'm not just walking around being like, do this, and then walking off. But I think there's definitely a thing about, I like to be available to the people that I'm working with, because if I'm available to them, then they can be available back. I spent a lot of time as a kid in a ballet space, and there's amazing things that I still recall from ballet practice, how I make things, the shapes of things, the movements, the discipline, even having discipline to turn up on time and warm up before the warm up, all of that stuff, like that's still part of my life. But there's also a lot of memories associated to ballet practice, which are about not being good enough, not being thin enough, not being enough, not being enough. And I think the more and more actors and dancers that I'm working with is to promote that they're there because of all of their stuff, not because of how perfect they are. And if I embody that, then they embody that. And then the space is much kinder for the work. You've got it's a really vulnerable place for people to give their bodies over, especially when I'm talking about particularly like supporting artists in television or film. They don't know me, and I walk in going ba 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 ba, come on, let's do this, and I sort of have to give a bit of that, and like I'm not joking, I do that, but it creates this. You've got a bit of elan in the room, there's a bit of joy, there's a bit of connective tissue, And I really value that, and I think maybe another way of answering your question is that I resist going into spaces where I can't do that.
Yeah, okay.
I've done enough now to know where I'm the most valuable, and I've done enough now to know when I'm not valuable, when I'm sitting on my hands going, oh, I could get up, I really want to get up, but I can't do that. So, and you said something about planning, and again, it's naughty, but sometimes I don't plan. And that's not because I haven't sat doing that, but I've planned by having this career. Not that I plan to have this career, but everything that has come before, like you're saying, your heritage, everything that you've worked with, who you've met, the teachers that you've had, the dances that you've seen, the musicals that you've obsessed with, the walks that you go on, the coffee that you drink, whatever, all of that is part of what you're bringing into the space. And that's how you're planning. You're planning by living.
I really understand that, and I know from our conversations, Yuki, you've also said a similar thing about the bespokeness of the endeavour or the offer.
Yeah.
And what feels really clear from what both Shelley and Polly have talked about is that there is a kind of responsive approach to what you're met with. So the environmental factors, some of them can be hygienic and some of them are really incidental, are what makes you do your best work. Can you give us a little window into what is in your knapsack and what are the environments that you really love that bring out the best work for you?
Yeah. Could I talk about that by comparing like what it's not?
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Like as a choreographer, I will compare like my role as movement director and my role as a choreographer. I think Shelley touched upon that quite a bit. But when I'm making a piece for a dance company or school, I have certain like movement vocabulary that I bring into, and it's my idea. I choose music, and also like when I work with Sarah, our dance company Say, we have completely different movement vocabulary and aesthetics that we bring. So if we go and make Say piece, it has like Say vocabulary. I really want the audience to almost like, not that I'm super famous, but like I want the audience to know, oh, this is a Yuki's piece, oh, this is a Say's piece. And same for other choreographers, where like, as a movement director, like Shelley was saying, for me, it's a facilitator role. I'm not coming in to make a stamp on work that this is Yuki's work. Like, it looks definitely like Yuki's work, because it's not about that. It's really about pulling the actors, what they have, and offering tools that allow them to expand their movement vocabularies. And being part of having a director's visions and being part of what's the best for the work. So we become, I think, almost like invisible. When that's done right, I think actually it's best invisible in terms of that. But in the rehearsal room, what I love is still bringing vibes. Like when we come into the rehearsal, we do like quite physical warm-up, put 90s R&B and hip-hop, and go in, shoulder roll, find the groove. And I know some actors are absolutely like, maybe not the big fan, but most of the time, just getting out of that, like, oh, I need to be serious, and that, like, it just gets out of that comfort zone, and then let's just tune into the body, and it's okay to bounce, and it's okay to like groove. That helps us finding an equal ground, and also just like, we can just be, because I think when you go to clubs, like having great tunes, or in the shower you're putting on your favorite songs, we always move, and everybody can move, and I think there's a beauty in that. So we love introducing like warm up in the morning, so that we warm up our body as well as the voice, and then it's really about being spontaneous and offering tools that could go. Because one look can be very different. So I sometimes use choreology method, where like there are different rhythms. So it could be look that is impact, you just arrive. Then it has like impression, where if you go continuous, then it has another intention, even though same action from here to there. Or it could be oh, and then it's got another story. So I think for me, it's about trying to offer as many tools as possible for the actors to be able to tell and convey the emotions that they would like to convey. So it's not about me coming in and step ball change, and kind of because it's not the. But
Go.
And I guess that's really similar for you, Polly, in that you talked about how you use human psychology and physiological psychology in your toolkit and as part of the tools that you kind of bring into the space. That's an additional tool, and you may have other additional tools that you use, but what are you trying to tap into when you're using that particular tool?
I'm like, for reference, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I guess like since I was a kid, I've been really interested. I mean, again, talking about what's in your knapsack, I'm so interested in why we do the things that we do, which is potentially another link between contemporary dance and theatre. You know, that might explain why lots of contemporary choreographers are coming into that theatre space, but because that's rich language, isn't it? I'm not a trained psychologist, but I'm really interested in working out, like, if I could do a whole scan of everyone in the room, it's like the way that people are sitting, moving, what they're wearing. So you've just had to adjust because I knew it was going to happen. I was like, someone's going to move now because I'm making them aware of their thing, even if you didn't know that you were going to do that. But we all, what's in our body is what we're hiding, what we're feeling, what we're exposing. I'm very interested in those details, and therefore that's led me to a line of work which is about finding real tiny nuances in people's social behaviour from, you know, because it was mentioned Freddie Mercury going like that. Freddie Mercury goes like that and we go, okay, fine, he's having a bop. But actually, when you know that he was a boxer when he was a kid, that is part of his movement makeup, in the same way that I still stand in first position from ballet, even though I haven't practiced ballet for about 15 years.
So do you look for actors' movement makeup?
Yeah, hugely, because it goes back to, I'm looking at actor, as a human person, and in a warm-up situation, in an exercise, seeing who's on the outside, seeing who's not coming in, seeing who's infusing the space with too much, or who's overdoing it, because that reveals so much. There's a sort of psychology on top of psychology of a rehearsal space. Not to mention you've put them all in tracksuit bottoms and they're all going like that. You've got to get past something. Do you know what I mean? As well as, oh, I'm playing someone that's going to, I don't know, murder their children. Like, that's a huge this is just an example, you know, but that's a huge psychological space to get involved in. I don't know why that came into my head. No. But that's a huge, like, it's on the page, but we've got to understand what that means. Or, you know, the sort of insight that I could offer is that somebody has lost a child, for example. So maybe there's something about hiding that's part of their stomach. And then that gives the actor something to play with, because they're acknowledging that their body has been through a trauma, and that can be really rich as a character. That there's something that exists in the body, not just because someone goes, didn't you lose a child? It's actually showing somehow. It gives license for feeling to come from that gesture or that thing that you're hiding, and when you expose it, what does that mean? That's what I'm looking for. And I know those are like sort of candid examples, but I think that's why movement, psychophysical movement, we've all got it. But in reminding people that, you know, you said earlier coffee, the way you were taught it was coffee, that you know, you give that to an actor, maybe he's had 3 coffees before he does that scene. That will change the physicality of it massively. And that's something that I can offer that's separate, that stretches the imagination of the director. They might not have thought of that. And that's why, you know, it's impossible to think that one person can answer everything for a character, whether that's the actor or the director. It's the actor's body is a matrix of the people in that room. And if they're alive to things that I'm talking about, but also to each other, then that's why those people are in the room, because they've got a physical psychology with the other people. Otherwise, they might as well just be by themselves. And I don't want to see that. Do you know what I mean?
not for 75 panellists.
Yeah.
That's triggering some real thoughts for you.
No, I echo the sentiment with regards to that connection, because I think it is important to tap in again to more than just the obvious and the evident. And I think with regards to like the toolkit idea, because Yuki was saying that what she brings is this immense knowledge from a contemporary dance background, and she can pull all of that knowledge into a room where maybe it's a different dynamic quality of movement that she's garnered from her time in the contemporary dance world. Polly, is talking about using that kind of physiological approach as well. And it just makes me think about the topic at hand, really, and whether or not I do think that the theatre world is stealing moves from contemporary dance world. And I think it comes back to the people, because I think that what is happening is that the theatre has opened its doors in a way to a lot of cross-pollination. A lot of contemporary choreographers are coming across. And as a maker and as makers, what we make in the room is dependent on the people that are inside of it. So if you have contemporary choreographers who are coming across, then they have something different to offer, then it's going to impact the work that's being made. But I don't think that there is let me choose my words wisely.
Say it.
I don't think there's a deliberate action of, we're going to like rip off the contemporary dance form in the dance world. I think that people go out and they watch things and they find things that are impacting. And the beauty of dance, having been a professional dancer, is that we use our bodies in a very expressive way. And when you go and you watch that, and if you are touched by that, you go, oh, how did they do that? How did I feel that emotional quality just from them moving? And how can I then use that and pull it into a room where it's actors who are using text, but I want to layer on something new? So I think for me, the provocation is that, we are making work, and it's the people who are now in the room that are creating, maybe, it's not even a new breed of work, because, if we look at dance and the craft of dance and physical theatre and you go back, it's almost cyclical, what we're doing. And you look at Pina Bausch and how expressive that is and how theatrical that is. And there isn't text, but there is text, because you can see it, and that's invisible. What's visible is the passion in the movement, and what's invisible is the text, but it's so visible. And so I think that's why, for me, I wanted to take a moment just to digest what Yuki said, and thinking about the toolkits and thinking about the provocation. I struggle with the word stealing, because I think it's influencing and it's inspiring. And dance, a lot of choreographers now are inspired by galleries and by people who are doing fine arts, and you find the cross-pollination happen with regards to sculpture and with regards to events. And I think what's beautiful is that it's become really apparent that maybe not any one form is enough to express what we have to say. And that's why we have to have this fusion. And it isn't, again, the need of going, I want what you got, come here, we're going to take it. I think it's an idea of sharing across art forms so that we can express ourselves in the best way possible.
I like that. That's collective and collaborative and creative.
I mean, maybe it's a bit like, optimistic and flowery, but hey.
Not at all, not at all. We've spent a bit of time kind of in our pre-conversations talking about the mythology of what it is that you do, and I feel like you've given us a little bit of a window into what that work looks like live, day to day, but also what's influencing it. What do you hope is the audience takeaway for today? What's your hope that people take away from this conversation, or from the idea of movement directors or movement direction?
I'll just ripple it down. I think a better understanding of what we do, what is movement direction. We get that a lot as movement directors. Knowing, I think, the takeaway that when you watch shows sometimes, there might not be a credit, which is an unfortunate thing, but there has been a beautiful movement professional working on that show to help the people that you're seeing on stage, whether it's embodying characters or whether it's being able to manipulate themselves in space. And just knowing that there are people out there who are trying to use movement in a very positive and affirmative way to influence and help the art form of storytelling flourish.
I'd love to come back to some points in there, but just for you, Polly, what do you hope the takeaway is?
I wish someone had told me this when I started out, because I was going, I need to go and learn how to waltz. I need to, you know what I mean? I was like, started looking for the things that I didn't have, and actually, you know, even coming up to this, I've been going, I don't know very much about contemporary dance. That's not my universe. There are things that inevitably I've seen throughout the years that may be a ghost of a reference in my head. And sometimes those ghosts of references are the things that power your process. So I guess there's a kind of, going back to Shelley's point right at the beginning, of the uniqueness of us. Like, we're unique as a collective, but we're unique in our own delivery and what brings us into a space. And I guess the takeaway seems to be, or what I would take away, is that I don't need to go and learn how to do anything else. Really, you know, I can if I want, but I don't need it, because if I've got the skill to observe and be curious and wonder, you know, I often talk about ideas like sailing, like sail through your head. You're like, I wonder if you just didn't do that, or I wonder if that person was there. You're creating scenarios of wondering, which makes more possibilities. You're never imposing anything on anyone. So even today, this morning, I led a session and I thought I should teach them. And ironically, it was a waltz that I thought maybe I should teach them, because it might be in the show. But it felt really restrictive, because it felt like I was teaching them something, when actually that first session was about availability and access and imagination, and, as I said before, stretching the director's imagination away from what they think something is. It's just throwing more things in and being able to activate and actualize. And that only comes with your uniqueness and your own things that you've got for free. So you don't need to go and get something else, really. It's just practice, it's flexing the muscle of seeing, really.
If you're myth busting, what is the thing that you want people to really take away?
Great. I was just going to say myth busting, so you
Okay.
said that one.
We're vibing.
We got connected. I think it's about, same as what Shelley and Polly have been saying, it's about myth busting that every process can be so different, and there's no like one way or right way to do it. So I feel like whichever project I'm going into, I'm like from scratch, like white canvas, whatever is needed in the space. It's been so nice to hear what you guys process, and I like a practice to openness. And because as a movement director, like when I have Sarah next to me, it's so nice, but often it's a lonely job, being in a creative space, like trying to figure out this movement on the spot, or like trying to communicate with the actors and finding the right language, because often between dancers we're like, can we have boom boom boom, it just goes okay boom boom boom, but it's different for like actors. Like I need to find the right language where like, is it from intention point, or is it from physical point, or tension, or like there's so many ways to communicate. I would love people to go back and say, oh, actually I'm doing it my own way, and this is the way, instead of like, oh, there's a certain technique that we have to follow. But I think it's about being authentic to your knowledge and experience, and then being open to the people, actors who are there.
And I wanted just to return to something that you just mentioned, Shelley, which is to talk about like not being credited. Just made me think about, you know, there's a context, isn't there? That if we move away from just movement direction and think about the kind of space of movement and dance across the whole ecosystem, I hear a lot of dancers talk about how dance is often, and choreography and movement is often, you know, not given the same level of investment and recognition and visibility. How important, given that there is this increase that we're, you know, this whole event is really lifting off this idea that there is this increase in demand, so we're recognizing that there is some value. How important is it to you that that recognition and being credited and that visibility gets clearer and clearer and more pronounced? Is it important?
It is important, I also want to say that when the question was posed, there was a big inhale by the three bodies here about being credited, because I think it is a fight, if I'm being really honest, that's being fought right now and has been fought before. There have been many movement directors before us, and many of them went uncredited, and they worked. I think people didn't know where to place them sometimes when they were brought into rooms, and it was felt like it was kind of like a consultation. Okay. So they were just kind of brought in to do something, and then that was it, and that was their part of the process. But it's still a contribution, because we're making this from ourselves. We're helping to create something. And now we find that movement directors are being credited, and it's a little bit more out in the open. But I will say this, having your name on a poster, having your name in a program with the word movement director beside you, also doesn't really bring it out to the fore. Because when people go to watch shows, they tend to go the actors and the director, and that's kind of it. Which is a shame, because it is a team of individuals who are helping to make this work that you are watching, enjoying, connecting with. So I think moving forward, things like this, platforms where people are able to speak about it, where it's a little bit more in the public forum, and it's a little bit more thought of as something that's important with regards to creation and making, will help. I know that Polly can speak about the different organizations that are behind the scenes now that are trying to push forward a lot of kind of rules of engagement with regards for movement directors and choreographers. I think also what I will say out loud is that choreographers and movement directors, this is a different conversation about, you know, how we see the differences between them, what are the commonalities. With choreographers, I think they've been kind of in the mainstream for a longer time with regards to musicals, going back to MGM films, music videos, everything is forefront, touring videos for artists, concerts for artists. They're very much in the public eye, whereas a movement director, again, we're a little bit more quieter. So what I say is, if you can, maybe what I'd like for people to take out of this is to help to be vocal with regards to who a movement director is, what we do. If it is that you work for organizations and you want to hire in people to help, as Polly said, it's for corporate settings as well. It's about helping people understand their bodies, whether they're doing speeches, or if it's about confidence, this can be used across therapy for children. So it's a massive field that, like you said, across a big ecosystem, is a very profound thing that's being done, but it's not being spoken about and it's not in the public eye. And the only way that it can get out there is if we, as a community, start to push it out there for people to be aware.
Yeah, you've got to think that in the 1950s there was an Oscar for choreography, and now there isn't. So if you look at that, you kind of go, someone's trying to shut us up, you know? Someone's trying to hide that this is a thing. I will say that, you know, a lot of credit-related conversations also comes down to money, and this is about producers. This is about the people at the top of the tree not paying residuals to people that have their name on the list, you know? So it's actually, you know, it can be on a poster and you go, yeah, my mum can see that I've worked on that, but actually I'm talking about, you know, the films that I've worked on that people have won prizes for. We don't currently get any residual, any makeup for that. There's nothing. The actor will get a residual for as long as that film gets played. That means people are earning money out of our work.
Yep.
So the answer is join a union. Join Equity. We've started the Choreographer and Movement Directors
Sorry, just
Network.
1 second. How many people are members of unions?
Ooh.
Great. Good.
You know, I was really resistant to it, but I've got mouthy and I've got tired and I've got poor out of other people earning lots of money. And so recently, you know, we've just put through a conversation, some points with Equity, joined forces to talk to the Producers Guild, basically, about explaining what movement directors do. Like literally it was a Zoom call going, and sometimes it's dancing, and sometimes it's this. Because we have to, this is why it's important that we shout about what we do, because those people in the rooms with the checkbooks don't know. And they don't know what it is that we're infusing. But I'm getting to go, I'm working with your #1 cast and they're winning prizes. So if you don't want me, then that's that. That's how it's going to go. But
how can people join the Mouthy Tired and Poor campaign?
It's a WhatsApp group. No, we've got you can if you're a member of Equity, ask to get involved in the Movement Directors Choreographers Network. It's kicking off, and the more information you have actually about what a union is, then you will be able to go into your workplace and look through your contracts knowing whether a robot is going to take your choreography in 20 years' time, which is possible, or whether you're going to get paid a residual for the amount of work that you've done, as well as things like having a credit on the role of a TV programme. That isn't a given. That is not a given. So you have to know more about what's silencing us. And I will say, like, it's another conversation for another day, Dance Umbrella, but you know, it's an inherently feminized space. So you also have to look at who's being quietened down, and we're not having it anymore. So come and join that.
Nice.
Yeah.
We like revolution.
But it's so tiring, isn't it? You're like, we're constantly
fighting.
Constantly being a revolution in every single room that we walk into as the movement person, because you're doing the work, people are getting the gifts, and you're going, even the word invisible. I remember Aisha Tashkaran, who I worked with at Central, said maybe we need to use the word integrated rather than invisible, because invisible suggests mystery and secrecy, and if we talk about integration, maybe that's a better way of putting our stamp on things.
Can I just say also big thank you as well, because it's not a new fight, it's a fight that's been going on. So we have to also give thanks to everyone that's been doing the fight from decades before us. Because we're just trying to continue that and picking it up.
Yeah. It's like Jane Gibson was like the first person I think that was credited as a movement director, and that was through Cheek by Jowl. You go back, you go to the beginning of the 1900s. There was Claude Chagrin was working as a movement director, but called movement consultant.
Movement or something.
Yeah, it's like she's gone in and analysed something and then consulted. It's like there's a lot of work that's got to this point, and it's usually the female body that's been doing it, and therefore it's allowed to be invisible.
Yeah, it doesn't go unnoticed. If we use the term integrated, is that important for you? And do you also see in your work, because you're also really focused in that commercial space, do you see a similar kind of echoes to where the conversation is right now?
Yeah, definitely. And maybe I could pitch in terms of like vocalizing and organizing to get the movement directors more acknowledged. And I think especially like, maybe I can talk about rehearsal space, where like there's a production meeting happens and there's a check for music, for set, for directing, costumes, all the department, but then somehow like movement department gets skipped. And I'm always kind of asking myself, why does that happen? Is it because movement isn't tangible? You know, writing, there's a script material right in front of you. Set, obviously, like it's a huge thing, material, where like for movement it's hard to be recognized because you can't hold on to it, because that's why it's so beautiful, like dance and movement, but also it's hard to get acknowledged for that. But I think, you know, what we can do, like what Shelley and Polly said, it's about vocalizing it, even in the rehearsal space. I know there are days that you just don't have the power to do it, but when, like, sometimes when I get skipped, excuse me, can I just give some notes about movement, or even short report? Maybe there is no, like, movement included, but there are actually a lot of things that could be said. And I think it's important that we start, like, kind of raising it as a, oh no, there is a space and it needs to be recognized and it needs to be discussed. also personally, I feel like movement directors and we look quite young. I feel like because we come in with like that's what I feel. Yeah, we do, right? Like, we come in with joggers and play fun music, and people assume that we're a bit younger than. Actually, I'm talking about myself. Definitely, people assume that I'm much younger than who I am, and I think there's a certain hierarchical or structure that in place within the theatre that kind of undermines people who practice movement and looking young and fresh. So I would like that to be more acknowledged. We come with a lot wealth of knowledge.
But the rehearsal space is a space that is often trying to be democratized along these lines of who has authority in that space. Is it actor-led? Is it the director? And I think what you're also kind of alluding to is that movement's space within that hierarchy and the hidden hierarchies within that is still questionable and still needs some focus and some integrated
This comes from the old rep system.
Yeah.
The British rep system was director, designer, light, sound. It existed as that, and it was largely blokes. God bless them. And so that there's a real hangover from that, definitely.
I've just got one more question before we open the floor, and this is to enable you to talk about something really positive like the future. What are your hopes then, Yuki, for movement directors? Where are your hopes? What do you hope happens in the future? Where would you like the future to be? And let's mark the future in 10 years.
In 10 years' times. I would like movement directors and choreographer to have more awards to be visible, to recognition, and also more valued and given time for in the rehearsals. I think that would be great, and kind of also, I think us or artist movement directors organizing ourselves so that we have a bit more network and place together. I know Polly's creating, steering network and stuff like that. It'd be amazing because, as I said earlier, it feels sometimes quite a lonely job to do, going into different projects, not knowing anybody, jumping in, kind of trying to get everybody on board. And I think it'd be great to have more space to have a conversation like this, that we can have the support from the peer group. That's what I'd say.
Nice. And for you, Polly?
I actually was just sort of dreaming there about more, in terms of theatre, I'd love to see more collaborations happening where the teams are celebrated rather than the individuals. I wonder what that would look like, at least. The idea of this team of people created this. Because sometimes, and I've said before, the best notes that I've ever got are from the lighting designer, and sometimes I don't talk to the director for a while. I'm on the floor doing things and making things. So that would be an interesting thing. I think, it's amazing that the Globe still has Glyn as a head of movement. It's
she keeps us alive.
We should also just not reduce that. That's a massive thing, considering I first worked at the RSC under a head of movement. That's how I trained. I did a year working under Stu and Leslie. And then that sprungboard me into the universe. How are those people going to train without a head of movement? I would love to see theatres revaluing what they're actually putting out there and actor process, because there is something that's happening, for better or worse, in the amount of TV and things that people are doing. We lose a sense of our body when we work in TV. We do. It's quicker, there's less rehearsal, it's less important when someone...
2D.
Yeah, but it's, unless, sometimes I get in there too, so I've got to acknowledge that. But I think actor-led process and actor training within theatres would be a great thing to see in the future, rather than it reducing. And I'm excited for that when I think of 10 years' time, I'm going to be head of movement somewhere, and I can, that's an energy that I can I can work with. If I think of that not happening, I'm sort of like, I'll do another production of Midsummer Night's Dream again because it will come round. And then, you know, like I sort of know what life will look like, you know, the next play, the same thing, that play will come back. We'll be putting that West End show on again somewhere else. It's got to shapeshift somehow.
There's got to be some kind of change, isn't there?
Yeah.
And Shelley, finally, your kind of ambitions for the future?
I think like these two, recognition, it's not coming from an empty place. It's not coming from a place of needing to be a name that's recognized. It's about the craft being recognized. And I think I love the idea of a team being recognized for the accomplishment, because I've been on so many projects that have been very collaborative in the nature of it, and the team is never celebrated in that way. So I think that would be wonderful. I remember going to a workshop, a film workshop geared for prospective choreographers. This was many, many years ago. And I remember the lady, who is fabulous and a great choreographer in her own right, said, don't enter this business if you are trying to gain recognition.
Okay.
And at the time I went, ooh, okay. I don't need that, that's fine. I just want to, you know, I want to learn. But I mean, now in retrospect, I go,
you understand.
So many people are working their asses off, and we're working our asses off. We're not just sitting and just chilling. We're really working quite hard. And you also study, you know, we speak about the knapsacks and the toolkits. Like the three of us here, we come from different backgrounds and worlds, but we worked hard to gain a lot of knowledge that we're now imparting. And we put a lot of work into creating these shows or working with actors. And then you're just supposed to get a tap on the back going, yeah, now, good, thank you. And we're gonna go and everything is gonna be fantastic. And it doesn't matter if you're recognized for all that hard work that you put in. And I think it's really hard. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, because again, we're artists and we love doing what we do. You know, it's a privilege to be able to do this, and a privilege to be able to work in the environments that we work in. But there's something about not being able to celebrate your work fully.
And everyone else's. That's the other thing. It's
exactly.
Like, we can't promote ourselves, you know. I was really jealous of people that work in offices. I'm like, oh, promotion, it's really good.
You're what?
Like, I am.
Wait, I think you've got this all confused.
No, I'm jealous of the theatre, like, obviously, I'm glad I don't work in the bank, but like the idea of getting a promotion and, you know, I'm working at the RSC at the moment, I'm on the same wage I was on 8 years ago. It's like, we can't promote ourselves. There's nothing to be said for the wealth of experience that we're offering. You're still going in with the same, like, all right, I'll do the same thing again, and just because I love it. And, you know, that's the thing.
What's the progression?
Yeah, what's the progression?
What's the progression, exactly.
Thank you for answering my questions. And I feel like we've covered a huge gambit, but I feel like we're about to open a little bit wider. 3 really good questions. And so if we can take this idea of the kind of viable career, is it a viable career space, or is it equally as saturated as dance in general is?
I don't think it's saturated. I think it's viable. I think that the skills that are needed is basically what Polly said about a curiosity, an open mind, a love for movement. I don't think that you need to have a dance background per se. Again, it's about the different experiences you might have growing up that informs it. If you look at choreographers and movement directors, not all of them are coming from a dance background. Some were actors, some were people who were studying something completely different and fell into the form. So I think, again, the curiosity and a love of movement, important. I think when COVID hit, it's damaged all sectors, but in particular, I think that the contemporary dance world took a massive hit. And I think while theatre scrambled to get its feet back up, I think when we come to the idea of funding and the government, I think that theatre was able to do it a little bit quicker. And I found that there was an influx from the contemporary dance world of people who were interested in learning a new craft and gaining a new skill set. And so I did find that more people are coming over, but I think it's a positive thing, because again, I think that there are voices that need to be heard that maybe can be expressed in theatre in a different way that maybe they couldn't do in the contemporary dance world.
Like Shelley said, there is a scarcity around subsidized sector. So I think a lot of choreographers moving into movement direction in theatre, which is more commercially run, which is a little bit more viable, I would say. but that doesn't mean that it's not competitive. I think it is still competitive, but compared to subsidized sector, I think there is a bit more space and jobs available. But also, like, another thing, it just, in terms of like subsidized and commercial sector, for me is that, interestingly, in my head, when I just graduated from school, I thought commercial work or Western, things like that, I thought things needs to happen quickly. I'm sure different for TV and films, but I feel like now subsidized sector feels more like within a week or 2 weeks, R&D, research and development, you have to achieve so much. Like, I'm trying to make this happen so that the programmers can come and watch this sharing and then sell this work for the tour, where actually in the commercial sector, it has a bit more width or like a space. From my experience, and especially like movement directing, you don't have to like generate so much movement materials, which takes time, where like movement directing, you are pulling things out. So thus far, I felt like it's a bit more like there's this space in the commercial sector that is time and resources. So yeah, contemporary dance choreographers are moving in towards it to make your career viable.
I think viability as well, like I definitely, when I started out, it was nerd viable because I was having to do 3 or 4 jobs crashing on top of each other. And like, it was a tessellation to be like, right, I'm going to be in Leeds on Monday, and then I've got to travel to Manchester, and I've got to do that. I'm going to sleep on the train, and then I'll be able to do that rehearsal in Plymouth. You know, I was like, I mean, I'm sort of joking about it, but I slept on, you know, I slept on trains, and trains that weren't sleeper trains, because they wouldn't pay for hotels for me. You know, I spent 2 years doing internships and whatever in London. It's not lost on me that I'm now making a career out of the thing that I've done, but I had to sacrifice a lot to do that because the money isn't there. Like, you know, and there isn't, same in terms of R&Ds and workshops, like you can get invited to do a workshop at the National, and I think it's like favoured nations of £75 or £90 a day. With, you know, you can't do that. It costs £90 to get to Waterloo. And so yeah, there's a lot. It is a viable career, but you have to choose what you're sacrificing along the way to get there. And now I can, because I work in TV and film, because I've managed to get into that world. Again, I didn't try to; it sort of came for me. But if you can get into a place where there is money and you will earn, then you can go and do the workshop for £90. Because for me, going to theatre fills my cup in order for me to then go into the film space. Not that that doesn't fill my cup, but there's something about you being barefooted in a room with 20 people that can really connect you to your practice again. And there's something about being on a film set going like this that doesn't, you know? We're talking about finances really in with that, but theatre does fill my cup usually, but now I am getting to a place where if I've had a bad experience, and there are 3 major bad experiences that I've had in the theatre space, and that was due to either my confidence not being strong enough to talk to a director about what was going on in the room, or being squashed and being told to shut up, which is never good for me. And you know, I think after those experiences, I then had to say, I'm only going to work with people that I like or admire. And that is the way to go. But now I can make that choice. I couldn't make that choice when I was earning £2.50 on every show I was doing. You know, you have to, you have to be kind of honest with what you're getting out of something sometimes, because there's some, you know, the name on the poster doesn't pay your mortgage.
I think that's a good myth as well to dispel. I get contacted a lot by people going, how do I become a movement director? And I think everyone sees the name on the poster and they think it's like all glittery. But the reality is that a movement director is generally not in the room full time. We're very much engaged on a part-time basis, which means that you are on a part-time fee. So you will see movement directors working 2 or 3 shows at the same time, because they need to put bread on the table. So the understanding is that it is something that we enjoy doing, but it's also hard work, and it's not all that glitters is gold, literally. And when you do work to a point where you're able to get it, if it's getting into TV or film or the commercial world, and I want to also mention that what I've seen a lot is a lot of contemporary dancers are now going into the fashion world, where they're doing movement direction for runways and also movement direction for shoots, photo shoots, and that's become really big business. So I think my advice is movement direction is something that's universal. It's about understanding how to direct bodies in space, and you can use that discipline to not only work in theatre or TV and film, but in other areas. And I think that's the thing that's key. It's finding what makes you happy and finding where you want to land. And what's good for one person is not necessarily going to be the answer for another. So I think being open-minded as well is something that will help with regards to moving forward.
And just to go to question 2 then, how do you replenish? We've heard and we can see and we understand in this discussion how passionate and committed you are to the craft, but how do you replenish? And if you're sharing some tips, what are the tips that you would talk about, the things to think about around how you fill your cup?
I was very jealous when Polly said how she replenished was through theatre, because I'll be very honest that I don't think I do a very good job at replenishing. I feel depleted quite a lot because as movement directors we give. I haven't yet figured out how to replenish. And I find that when I leave processes, I might have a week or 2 off. I might go, oh, I'm going to go on holiday and that's going to replenish me. It doesn't. And I come back maybe half full and then I'm into something else. So that's something that I think I need to address.
And how do you replenish?
Yeah, definitely going on holiday helps. But also, I guess, like my privilege of going between the contemporary dance or my dance project and movement directing, having different worlds, kind of going back and forth, like really helps me and fill my cup. Because something that I can do, for example, like, you know, the theatre work, it has been quite a much bigger production than what I can achieve on my own for my dance project, which is really exciting. And seeing the final production, maybe I'm only this part of it, but it's an integral part, and it's amazing to see like bigger production come into life. But then at the same time, I'm like, oh, I just want to go and bust the moves. So when I do my contemporary dance or like dance projects, and that really fills my, like, oh, let's just dance and like feel the feel of moves and aching, and that it really fills my cup. So it's actually the coexistence of going one to next, kind of like in the cycle of it really helps for me.
And I guess I'm saying replenishes theatre replenish because I know, girl, it kills you sometimes, us. But I mean, theatre replenishes my creative cup, which is quite a lot of my life. And I think we work so much because we have to exploit the money when it comes, but also the industry exploits us because we work all the time. So it's quite hard to take time, because as soon as you go, I'm going to take that week off, someone goes, do you want £75 a day to do the thing? And you're like, yay, somebody wants me. You know, that is part of that is the trap. But like, you know, there are things that I have to go back to, things that I was really keen on and it's proper, like, sort your inner 5-year-old child out. But I did social dancing as a kid. My granddad, you know, was a country dance caller, so I have been known to pop to a ceilidh, and because I find it, because it reminds me, you're all laughing, but you should come, it's really good, but because there's a thing of dancing for the sake, for the love of it. If you've made a career out of the thing that you love, it's really hard to love it. And because you're going, oh, you bastard, I've got to warm them up again. And like, okay, you know, so I have to remind myself of the reason why I started doing it in the first place, which is about connection and holding hands with strangers in a dance reel. That feels great to me. But also I did art history at university, so I'll go and I'll go to galleries, all of that sort of stuff. It always does still feel like working because you can find inspiration in everything. So good luck. Yay!
And obviously that third question, which is, which is trying to turn the provocation on its head, but it's also an extension of this idea about replenishment and safety. There is safety in going, I'm only going to do work that has these principles that feel really important to me and that keep me safe and don't drain me too much. How important is safety, and is it a conversation that you're able to have as part of your engagement in new projects?
Yes, speaking for myself, I am able to have the conversations about it. Why I felt really strongly pulled to the question is because I also had that provocation of flipping it, because I think in the same way that theatre is pulling from contemporary dance also pulls from theatre. What is happening now in the theatre spaces is that they're bringing in drama therapists to be in the space. So in particular, initially it was if it is a play or a musical that has a topic that's going to potentially have a traumatic kind of response from a company, then they started hiring in drama therapists who would come in and maybe would speak about whatever the theme was, or would just be on call and available to the cast. And that's, of course, at an expense. What I'm finding more and more is happening is that drama therapists are being hired regardless of whether or not the production is felt to be something that is going to be traumatizing to those that are involved. So they're being brought in this space to establish for the actors or the performers that there are rules with regards to how much of yourself you're going to give into a character, or how much of yourself you're going to embody. And these are the tools that will help you with regards to taking that skin off when you finish. What I find as well, and Yuki and Polly, I guess, can also comment, is that as a movement director, we also provide a little bit of that support as well, because we have that training or that know-how to go, well, we need to ensure that you're being safe with regards to yourself, and you have to have autonomy over Shelley, and then feel that Shelley is not completely fusing in with the actor. There are actors who do method acting, and that's a completely different conversation. So again, it comes down to the personal. How can I help this person, and what is the best way to do that? But I think advocating for drama therapists in the space is something that I do, because I think, again, it's, before there was the hierarchy of director, set designer, lighting, sound, then along came movement director, and then the fight directors, and now we have drama therapists, we have voice and dialect coaches as well. And I think everyone should be able to come into the space to help and assist, to give a very safe environment with regards to the practice of making, because it is really something that's quite arduous and hard on an acting body or on a dancing body. And dancers in particular, this is our vessel, this is what we use, and we take on all the story and all the emotional quality that we need to express in this way that's very visceral. So with those productions where they are really going deep, and depending on what the theme is and what the narrative is, I know in speaking with people in that network that it can bring up a lot of triggers and a lot of trauma, and unfortunately there aren't the tools at hand currently to help them to come out of it on a grueling tour, or if it's a short stint and then they're left with the aftermath of that. So I would say advocating to get drama therapists in the space to work with them, whether it's at the point of R&D or if it's during rehearsal, it has to be at the start and not at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive conversation, that as well. But quickly and candidly, I guess there's also another way, which this is all brilliant, but also if you don't have access to that, it's about creating a character where the trauma or the triggering thing is happening to something else. Whether you need to go, right, I'm this person, or this thing is transference. It's not a flex to put yourself through pain. I question whether we can ever really method act. It's like Daniel Day-Lewis has gone and learned how to make a violin or something. I'm like, yeah, I mean, great, good luck. Now what? You know, I don't understand. But I think there is something about it's got to be transferred somehow, and any space which is like causing yourself misery does not make you a great performer. It makes you exercising something, and that also has to be in the space. So if I'm working with an actor who has to go through something traumatic or has to feel something that they haven't experienced, we have to make sure that that's separate. And literally, you know, the thing of like at the end of the day, stepping out of the character, even that can activate, you know, or reactivate themselves. Lots of shows I've done set in motion a kind of ritual before they start something and a ritual as they leave, and that is usually to help unravel, so that they're not carrying this person who's been through something traumatic on the bus home with them, go to meet their husband or partner or whatever, and be like, hiya. Like you've got to get rid of it somehow. So rituals probably is the quick answer.
I think it was perfect.
Okay, we've got time for one last question. Interesting question.
How do you get the outreach you need to the general public? I think within the circles of the ecosystem, it is voiced, it is being vocalized, but I think for true change to happen, it needs to be in that broader arena. I know that with regards to what Polly said about the choreography award and the Oscars, there was like a, petition that was being done, and I think that got a little bit of press and was in the media for a little smidge. But it's not to the point where it's also a question of, do the general public care? I know it sounds horrible, but does your person who is in the 9 to 5, who's going to the supermarket and is living their best life, do they care about movement directors and movement direction? Probably not. So it feels more about those in the industry and bringing it to the forefront and conversation with regards to our massive ecosystem. And that feels like the best foot forward.
Yeah.
If you
The reason why the Oscars thing like gained a bit of, and you can look at the
Traction.
Choreographers Guild Instagram account, which is a new guild that they've started in the US, and they're really good at sort of explaining what's going on. And the reason that got traction is because people understand what Oscars are. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sitting there going, why does nobody care about my amazing production of Dr. Faustus that I did in 2009? But no one cares. We are doing it. We are doing platforms. We are speaking about it. But it will only, it's the word, you know, it even goes to the message of what's a movement director, what's a choreographer. We regularly say choreographer because it's a word that people understand. People use the word choreography in their daily lives, but whether it's like I'm choreographing how I'm setting the table, you know, like that. So there's a kind of
Shorthand.
Yeah, there's a shorthand for that, and it's about, you know, it's gradual. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're trying. Just go up to people on buses and be like, hey, have you heard about movement direction? That will help.
But I'm really interested, Yukiko, if that's the same in that commercial space, which in some ways exists in a really different public space often.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I think it's about maybe, I guess, like subsidized sector or even in theatre, the reach is slightly less than commercial on TV and films, and I guess it would be great to maybe utilize the social media now to, you know, start a campaign movement. I know it takes a long time. Like, you know, Polly's been working with Equity, which is union. But again, like the public wouldn't necessarily like know maybe Equity, because let alone like trying to get dancers sign up for Equity is sometimes hard work. But in terms of, I guess, commercial sectors, there are more people signed up for Equity, and I think it'd be great if we can organize it like across sector of like commercial and subsidized and Western, all of that, if we can actually come together and what about choreographers? What about movement directors? Like, I think if there is a way that we can really reach utilizing the social media to start making a change.
And it does feel like there's still work to do within the industry. Yeah. We are already really behind time, so thanks to those who've joined us online, and for those of you who've been in person, please thank our amazing, articulate panellists. Yukiko, Polly and Shelley.